All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into the high-stakes chess match between the world's two biggest economies. We're going to break down exactly how China is playing the long game in an age of really unpredictable change.
So this quote from China's President Xi Jinping really kicks things off, doesn't it? He's talking about a huge global shift. But you know who the catalyst was? Someone totally unexpected. Donald Trump.
The U.S.-China relationship, you could argue it's the most important one in the entire world. And right now, it's all about two leaders with completely different playbooks.
So on one hand, you've got Donald Trump. His whole approach is impulsive, it's about quick, transactional deals. You can think of it as the Twitter game. And on the other hand, there's Xi Jinping, guarded, methodical, a master of the strategic long game. And you know, this massive difference in style, it basically sets the stage for everything we're about to talk about.
So how did this whole thing really kick off? Well, it all started when Trump threw the first punch with the trade war, a move that honestly just blindsided Beijing.
The wild part is that this happened just a few months after Trump got this huge over-the-top welcome in Beijing. For the leadership in China, this was a massive wake-up call. It drove home one simple, powerful lesson. Relying on the United States, that's a dangerous game.
And you know, there's this old Chinese saying that just perfectly sums up their new mindset. They learned a really hard lesson, and they basically decided, okay, never again. It was time to start rowing and rowing hard against that current.
So, what was China's response? Well, it wasn't some knee-jerk reaction. Nope. They put together this really thoughtful long-term strategy, and it's basically built on three main pillars.
First up, China totally saw an opportunity in all the chaos. While the U.S. was starting to look, well, a little unpredictable, China stepped in and positioned itself as the stable, reliable adult in the room. And what happened? Western leaders started flocking to Beijing, all looking for a hedge against a U.S. they couldn't count on.
Now, let's be clear, Trump's tariffs absolutely landed a punch. There's no denying it. Last year, China's exports to the U.S. dropped by a whopping 20%. On the surface, you'd look at that and say, wow, that's a huge win for Trump. But like everything we're talking about today, that's just not the whole picture.
And this is where we see China's big pivot, the second part of their long game. They deliberately started to look away from the U.S. consumer. Exports to India shot up almost 13%, Southeast Asia over 13%, and the EU more than 8%. And look, this wasn't just about finding new buyers. Oh no, this was a strategic play to build influence and really embed their economy in these super important regions.
But it's not just about trade routes. China has a third move, a really powerful strategic lever in this whole conflict. You could even call it their ultimate trump card.
And that card is rare earth minerals. Now, don't let the name fool you. These things are in everything. They're in the iPhone you might be holding right now, they're in electric cars, and this is the really critical part, they're essential for things like F-35 fighter jets and those super advanced guided missiles.
And this right here, this shows you the kind of chokehold China has. Sure, they mine a lot of the world's rare earths, but the real power, it's in the refining process. And they control over 90% of it. That's practically a monopoly. It gives Beijing this incredible strategic lever they can pull whenever they want.
And you know, this confidence is so high, it's actually spilling over into their pop culture. On Chinese social media, they've even come up with nicknames for Trump. One of the big ones is Taco, which stands for Trump always chickens out. It's this idea that a lot of his big, loud threats, they just kind of fade away.
But then there's this other nickname, one that's a little more complex, Chuan Jian Guo. It means Trump the nation builder. Now, obviously it's sarcastic, but the thinking behind it is pretty fascinating. The idea is that by pushing China so hard, Trump is actually forcing them to become more self-reliant, to innovate faster, and basically to speed up their own path to becoming a superpower. Kind of ironic, right?
Okay, so China's playing this masterful long game on the world stage, right? But it's not all sunshine and roses. Back home, there are some serious cracks starting to show. Problems that could really throw a wrench in their big global plans.
First off, that crazy explosive economic growth that we've seen from China for decades, it's hitting a major wall. Beijing just set its lowest GDP growth target in over 30 years. That's a huge deal. It's a flashing red light that their economic engine is starting to sputter.
And a huge piece of the slowdown is a massive crisis in their property market. For years, they built and built and built, fueled by debt. And now, they're left with these eerie ghost towns full of empty apartment buildings. It's basically a ticking time bomb sitting right in the middle of their financial system.
And all of this has mixed together to create this, well, this toxic economic stew. You've got deflation, where prices are actually falling. You've got this huge overcapacity in industry, factories that are just churning out way more stuff than anyone needs. And for the first time on record, investment in things like new buildings and equipment actually went down. So what's China's solution when it has all these problems at home? Well, it's to export them, by dumping all those cheap goods out into the global market.
So, with all this back and forth, this giant chess match between the US and China, you have to ask, where does that leave everyone else? Well, it's forcing the rest of the world to make some really tough calls.
Think about it. On one side, you have the US, which a lot of countries now see as unreliable. On the other, you have China, with all these internal economic problems we just talked about. So what do? You don't pick a side. The new buzzword for just about every other country is hedging. You keep your options open, you talk to both sides, and you try your best not to get caught in the middle. Because at the end of the day, for all of China's smart moves and long-term planning, we have to be clear about the reality on the ground right now. The United States is still the world's biggest economy. It still has, by far, the most powerful military on the planet. China is rising, no doubt about it. But in terms of sheer economic and military power, it's not a fight between equals, not yet.
And so, this all leaves the rest of the world with this massive high-stakes question. When two superpowers are going at it like this, is staying neutral even really an option? Or sooner or later, is everyone going to have to pick a side? That's the question, and right now, there are no easy answers.